All right, everyone, welcome to our January MBA alumni speaker, JD. He graduated in 2019 with his MBA, and we are going to hear about virtual project management with him today. I'm going to turn it over to him because he's going to do a way better job of introducing himself than I will.
All right. Thank you, Kristen, and thanks for organizing this. And I'm honored to be here now speaking on the alumni speaker series. I work for a company called Esri, based in Redlands. I have been in this industry for close to 25 years, and majority of my time I have spent in doing project management. Currently, I'm working as a client partner, which is a kind of account management, relationship management, and program and project management put together. The kind of experience I have gained in this space as an alumni and as a former student of CSUSB, I just want to share that experience. And especially during this pandemic times, most of the things that we are doing is virtual, right? And we are fortunate to be part of this, whether it is academics or whether it is information technology. We are really lucky that we have a platform where we can communicate with each other. We can actually do our work actually virtually without any disruption in the business continuity. So I have chosen this topic, virtual project management, because there are so many projects that we do, not only in the IT field, but overall, and how we are actually managing it virtually, that I will describe here. As the title suggests, it will be mostly on project management. The virtual part will come in the last part of the presentation. And I'll first focus about what is a project and how it is managed, and then I will get into how we are doing it in the recent times. So we have structured it in a way that 40 minutes I will spend on my presentation, and 20 minutes actually we will spare for discussion. I hope it is okay with all of you. Okay. In our daily life, actually, we do so many things. Can we call it as a project? What is a project, and how we can define a project? So a project is always a temporary thing. It has a start date or a start time and an end date or end time. And it has a certain goal. So you can tell that, no, I will construct my new home. That's a project. It has a start time, it has an end time. Or let's say I'm making a coffee for myself. That is also a project. It has a start time, it has an end time, and it is temporary, and it has an objective that, no, I want to drink coffee. That is my objective in this. I'm actually taking a 2-year MBA course. That's a project for me, right? It has a start date, it has an end date. I cannot actually continue forever to complete my MBA. So this is the definition of a project, that no, it should be temporary. It has a start date and time and end date and time, and it has an objective or certain goal. And every project has a series of events. It has a lot of processes, and it has a lot of activities as well. If the project is bigger and complex, then the number of events and the process and the activities will be more and more. So I will talk about an example here, and that is how I want to start about a project and how we can actually do it ourselves, and how we can apply that into information technology or a software development field. So today, I have a couple of friends with me who are interested to have their dinner And I have chosen that, no, I will have some big juicy burger. So you may ask me why actually for project management, how this burger actually comes into the picture. Why you are actually choosing a burger here? Okay, all the components of a burger, I can very well relate to what I'm doing in my IT field. Just to simplify and just to make it more relatable, I think no, everybody here at least know what are the constituents of a burger, what are the ingredients of a burger, and know how we can actually make a burger in a couple of hours. So a couple of my friends, we decided that no, today we'll host no 10 of our friends, including we two, and no, we'll just make burger for them. So this is called a project because we have only just 3 hours. It is just like 4:30 and no 7:30 we'll have our dinner. So there's a definite time limit we have. We have to complete like create or make 10 burgers within 3 hours. And we have a budget of just $60. We have to spend only that much. And few of my friends, they have some allergies and they have some problem with gluten. So we should have gluten-free burgers, the buns, and it should be fresh. Everything, right from the buns to the patty, to all the greeny leafy vegetables that we put there. Everything should be fresh. Of course, not the slice of cheese. So whenever actually we are getting into a project, these are the specifications that we get to start a project. That it should be completed within this hours or this many days or this many years. We should have a firm budget. I cannot go beyond this particular amount. And there are certain other criteria, dependencies, and constraints as well. And here I have very briefly described about the number of burgers I'm making here. So it is very much quantified. Well, now I have to relate it to this slide where we talked about the budget, which is $60. We talked about schedule, which is 3 hours. And the communication part, the tools and technology, that I will just touch upon afterwards. And whenever you are in a team and you are working in a project, you need to have communication, right? Now you talk to your team members either personally or through text or email. So that's a very vital part of your project. Whether you are making a burger or you are creating a new software tool, communication constitutes a big part of every project management. So these are the basic components that is required in a project, especially when you are creating a new tool or a new software you are making. You need a lot of tools and technology to develop that. Similarly, in the case of a burger, we will have a griller, we will have oven, and a lot of these condiments and other ingredients. And let's say I do not want to make a fresh patty. I can always look for buying it from a different source. So that is where actually we engage either a vendor or a partner. And to even make a burger, you should have you should know the technique how to make a burger. If you ask my 5-year-old son, he may not even be interested to do this, or he doesn't have the training to do this. So you should be well trained to make a burger. Fortunately, I have the skill, so I will do it, and some of my friends also will help it. Well, so these are the basic components, and if you look at the this figure particularly, the people part is the most important part in a project. They are the guys who will be running the show, and you have to empower them, you have to encourage them, you have to even sometimes empathize with them. If you want to lead a team and if you are a project manager, it's very important that this is the most central component of a project, where you have to motivate, you have to empathize, you have to lead, you have to manage the set of people. So very similar thing actually, we also do in a software development related project management. Okay, so whenever you start a project, whether it's making a cup of coffee or creating IT software or even making a burger, you come up with a charter. If you have seen my earlier slide, the charter is described in 3 or 4 pictures or descriptions. So that is the way actually you create a project charter, where you clearly define what is the objective of this project and who is the project manager, when it will be completed. So all the details are there in the project charter, and that basically is the starting point of your project. And you do a kickoff meeting and relay the information to all your team members. This is the project that we are going to do, and these are the roles we have to perform. So after that, you create the team and you start planning it. So in the case of a burger, we have to plan, because everything has to be fresh, even the bun and the making the patty. So you need to find out actually what are the different components of a burger, ingredients that I have to purchase. I'll come to that actually in the next slide, where actually I will explain how I have divided everything into different smaller components, how I have decomposed them, and one by one actually I'm doing those processes that I will describe. But before that, I just want to explain that these are the different phases or life cycle of a project. So in the planning stage, you basically decompose that project into smaller components, smaller units, so that you can assign it to different people. That is called the WBS, or the work breakdown structure. Then you also find out different types of dependency. There are few tasks which has to be done first, and then you can do the second one. You can actually relate it this way. In in our MBA course, there are certain foundational courses that we have to complete, and then only you can go for the different focused ones. So similarly, when you are doing a project, you have to actually complete a few foundational things, and then you can actually go to the next. So you have to actually find out those dependency. You have to identify a lot of constraints if they have. And also, you have to identify the critical path. So what is critical path? When you are going from point A to point B, there are many ways actually to reach from point A to point B. So which one is the fastest way? So in this example, in making the patty, I have to make a fresh patty, so I have all the ingredients here, and I have all the components. So some of the components that you see, the bread and the patty, these two I have to make on my own. It has to be fresh bun and the fresh patty. So, and these are the two things which will take the maximum time. And when I'm trying to complete everything in 3 hours, I need to target these two first, because they are the ones who are taking the maximum time. So I will start my, first thing I have to actually work on my bread and work on my patty. I will tell my friend, you focus on bread and I'll focus on patty. So that is the way you can actually shorten your length of making your burger, right? So this is exactly what we do in even in IT. We also use this critical path. So we want to find out which are the tools we have to develop first, so that we can save a lot of time and money. So these are some of the very important part you have to look after while you are in the planning stage. In many a project, people do not spend much time in the planning phase, and they don't identify all those components clearly. They don't really break up or decompose those components into subcomponents and into smaller units, and they have a lot of problem afterwards. Because if your unit cannot be assigned to a person as a task, and if there are multiple people involved in that, then that's a problem. If you define those WBS clearly, and you can assign it to different individuals, it makes your life easier, because they are the guys who are responsible for that. So when you divide all your roles and responsibility and you assign them tasks, it is easier for them to complete. If there is a mix-up of roles and responsibility, even on a WBS level, it will create a lot of complications, and there will be finger pointing that this person has not done this and I could not complete this. So this is important. That planning phase is the most important phase in the life cycle of a project, and you have to be very prudent in identifying this WBS, and also identifying all the dependency constraints and the critical path. So once the planning phase is ready, and you want to now execute everything that you have planned, this is like the in a layman term, it is like an assembly line. You just keep on doing production, because you now know that this is exactly what I have to do. Then you start actually producing it. So if everything is defined clearly in the planning stage, the execution phase is basically easier. And while actually during the execution phase, you may come up with a lot of processes which can be automated, and which can be some of the time can be shortened, because some of the repeated tasks can be automated using different tools, or you can create your own tools. And this is the phase where, as a project manager, you have to manage a lot of people. You have to lead them, and you have to take care of different other aspects of what they are doing. You have to do a lot of coordination. So for a project manager, I think this part is not very critical, in a sense that if you have trained manpower and you have a well-defined process, they will continue to do this job pretty quickly, and it's not a very difficult phase for a project manager. However, when you go to the next phase, which is monitoring, so there actually you keep on watching over everybody's shoulders that how the project is actually going on. Whether you are whatever milestones you have defined, whether you are meeting, or you have some slippage in schedule. Sometimes in the larger project, every month we have this on value management meetings, where we have to find out in this month we have already spent thousands of dollars, whether we have completed that much of tasks in our project. So this is a very senior management level meeting where your financial evaluation is done by different people. Normally it is in the program manager and the delivery head level, and you are actually answerable for that. If things are not going on well in your project, basically they will catch you and they will start questioning you why actually it is delayed, and why things are not moving. And this is the phase where you also evaluate a lot of risks, because sometimes there are some risks which are not anticipated, and you didn't have a mitigation plan in the planning phase. And if it comes up, then no, you have to mitigate it within a certain time frame. If you are delaying certain things and you keep delaying it, sometimes it's become critical, and it has a big consequences on your project success. Another thing to keep in mind that many a times while you are doing you are already in the execution phase, you may get some requests from your project sponsor that no, I want to also include this functionality into this project. So for this, we have something called change management, which is a process on its own. And so you have to basically propose what are the change management process, and how we can tackle, and how much of the components are affected by this change management, what is the exact consequences I will have when I'll complete this project. So sometimes in the change management, we find it is too risky to insert another variable into the project. So we'll just try to avoid it. And sometimes we take it because even after doing the changes, things are actually stable. So we think, okay, we can actually manage with this change management. But these are the things we need to do in the monitoring phase. And finally, once everything is done and the project is complete, so you come to the closure phase, where you basically deliver everything, take the sign off from the customers, and make sure all the testing is done in the customer side, and they're happy with the delivery. And never ever forget to celebrate once you complete your project. That's the most important part of spending so much time in this project, right? Well, so this is a very traditional way of actually handling projects, whether it is a construction project or it's a project that we are doing in the software field. It's called the waterfall model, where things are very consequential. They're actually, you can say one comes after the other. It's very straight line, and one phase is over, you go to the next one. The second is over, go to the third one. So very straight line kind of a model. But nowadays, I mean, from 2001 onwards, there is a different type of what you call the methodology, project management methodology come into force. And it is well embraced by different IT companies. Now that has become a kind of default model for doing IT or software project management. So before I go to the next slide, I just want to tell you that exactly the same thing that I have described here, I will try to mimic in how I'm making that burger. Okay. For your kind information, I'm not a good cook, but I just try to create a make-believe story. Don't catch me on whether this will be really juicy, tasty burger or not. So just excuse me on that. Well, before you try to make a burger, you need a patty, right? That's the most important part of a burger. Then you need a bun, and these are the two things actually basically you will make it at home, and the rest of the things, whether it is tomato or onion or cheese slice, that you have to bring from the market, right? So when you start actually making it, before that you need to have a plan. You cannot just go to a kitchen and start making a bun, right? So you list out what are the components that you need in a bun. And so all the points that I have described here, whether it is 2 pounds of gluten-free flour, dry yeast, warm water, a couple of eggs, and vegetable oil, salt. So those are the things you ask your friend to go to the market and fetch it within half an hour. You go to the nearest supermarket and just bring it. You also tell him to bring the material for the paddy. So here, we'll talk about some of the dependencies and the risks. So I'm inviting, so the total number of participants for this dinner is 10. There are 10 people who will be eating these burgers. So ideally everybody will get one, okay? But I will take 2 more because I foresee that there may be some risk because I'm making it for the first time. Probably I will burn the buns, couple of them, or maybe the patty will not have a proper shape. So instead of 10, I will actually make 12, and accordingly I will change all my amounts in whatever I'm buying from the superstore, right? So similarly, I will have a dependency when we're talking about dependency and constraints. So constraints are some of the guys are actually having allergic to gluten, and then if you are buying some normal flour, then probably that will be not a good thing, right? You know that. So these are the constants, and so you need to actually go to the store and look for the gluten-free flour, right? Similarly, dependency is unless you have the right mix of spices and condiments in the kitchen, you cannot actually mix it up with your patty. When you are making a patty, you should have all those condiments and spices. And if you are actually dependent on that, and if you are missing any one of them, then it doesn't have that taste, correct? So so every part of the project management technique you can actually employ here. So in the execution phase, so this is the planning phase that I talked about. In the execution phase, you have everything is listed out here. Now for the patty, you have to preheat the grill for 385 degrees, and you have to mix up all the ingredients in the patty. Then you make it a rounded one, and then grill for 5 minutes one side, then another 5 minutes the other side, or maybe in between you can actually flip how many times you like. And in the meantime, you need to test whether the temperature is right or not, or whether still it is juicy or not. So exactly the same thing actually you do when you do the any IT project. You continue to develop, and you continue to test. And unless you test, you don't know whether it is really tasty or not, right? So if you look at this, which one is taking the maximum time? It is the buns. It's taking actually 45 minutes. Sorry, actually, I just mixed it up. This is actually 45. Bun process is actually 45 minutes. So which one is the first thing to do? Shall we start the patty process first, or shall we start the bun process first? It's the bun, right? Because I'll just knead the bun and then actually put it in the oven, and then I will start attacking the bread. The patty. So while this thing is going on, I will not actually wait till everything is complete. By that time this is done, my chopping of the tomato is done, my chopping of the onion is done, my slice is also ready. So I will not actually take more time into just to assemble them. By the time it is done, I will just keep everything in one tray, and just one by one I will start assembling them, right? So that's the way actually, even though I have 3 hours, I will complete everything in 1.5 hours or 2 hours. This is where exactly I'm bringing my project management technique into the flow. All right, so in 1970, this waterfall model actually came into existence. And do you know that this is not for the first time it was tested in IT field. It was basically came from a auto industry, and it was basically brought into the IT field. And it has been going on for a long time till in 2001. Some of the IT experts, they feel that we should actually change it and make it a little bit different when we are doing IT project management. So that is how this agile concept is born. And this agile methodology is nothing but actually doing everything incrementally. So you basically define a core and then grow it over a period of time. So when you look at the waterfall model, you have this requirement, design, develop, testing, and deployment. Same thing actually we'll do in agile methodology, where we have requirements, design, develop, test, and then deploy. However, the difference here is waterfall is a bit rigid in terms of its working style. Unless one part is complete, you cannot move to the next one. So when you are doing an IT project, there are a lot of intangible things. Unless you have the product ready, you cannot say whether it's a good product or a bad product. So some of the bigger projects where you take a year or two to complete the IT project, and finally you are not satisfied with the final outcome, you waste a lot of time and money. And in order to remove that obstacle, so these people have thought of doing it incrementally. First, actually, create something that you can show it to your customer, and if he's happy with that, then add some more functionality, then again show it to them. So that way, actually, you keep on adding more and more functionality, more and more performance, more and more bug-free software, and it becomes more tangible for them. They cannot actually see that after 2 years I'm going to get this product, and get disappointed when they see that some of the functionalities are missing. So that is how this agile methodology is helping nowadays for the IT industry. And many of the IT projects you will see, people are using this agile model, especially if you are into a product development. Definitely, this is the method you have to use. But even in a normal IT projects also, people are using a hybrid approach where some of the waterfalls methods they also use, as well as the agile methods. Okay, now I'll just switch gear. So we have a fair idea now how this project management work. I just gave you a simple example of making burgers. So now, because of the pandemic times, we are living a very different kind of life. Of course, working remotely has become a new normal, but how actually it is affecting us? What are the challenges that we're facing? What are whether actually we are getting a good productivity level, or the productivity is going down, and whether we could meet the challenges of our schedule, the demand of our schedule. That we have to see how we are actually doing in this pandemic times. And now more and more teams are distributed. They are working from home anywhere, whether one country or from other countries, you never know. It's a very distributed team. And this situation, actually, it was a perfect situation for the IT industry, where we have been preparing for last so many years. Just think of like 20 years back, if this COVID-19 situation has happened that time, did you realize how much of stress we would have taken to work remotely? I don't think that time technology was that mature enough to accommodate different components of doing this IT business, and also doing this project management, also working from home. This was a perfect stage to test what we have been developing for last 20 years. And luckily, we have, like in my company, we didn't even take a single day break. There is no disruption in the business continuity. And that has happened to many other companies. I can hardly think of any company which didn't seamlessly transform or transition into working from home remotely. So I think no, we should be thankful that no COVID came in 2019 or 2020, whichever you choose. So we are well prepared for it. So I will talk about no, in this virtual work environment, how we are doing our project management and how technology is enabling it. Because without technology, we could have really struggled. Just think about I think most of the IT companies nowadays are putting all their files in the cloud. Even all the machines are in the cloud, so you can just log in there and do your work. Some of the tools that I wanted to just depict here, because these are the tools we are now doing using every day. Particularly, for file sharing, we are using Dropbox. Even some people actually use Google Drive, Box, or OneDrive. For communication, we are using MS Teams, Microsoft Teams, and this Zoom actually itself is a testament to how we are communicating with one another in this meeting. Many people are also using WebEx. For project management software tools, we are using Jira. Then there are some free tools available, some open source tools also available. Like Teamwork is a good example. And now the Office 365 is there, so you can actually use Microsoft Project also online. You don't have to actually install it in your laptop or somewhere. And even for some small and medium IT industry, people are using Zoho a lot. Similarly, for the CRM or the customer relationship management, we are using Salesforce a lot. But there are other alternatives to that as well. People are using like Oracle CRM, MS, Microsoft Dynamics. And so whether your company has a private cloud or a public cloud, you can use, if it is a private cloud, you can use your VPN, and you are still secured, and you can do your work without any disruption. So technology is a big enabler, and it is helping us in a big, big way. All right, so I think I have 3-4 more minutes. I will just cover this. What are the challenges that we are facing while doing things remotely? So first of all, there is no in-person activities, and it's a big drawback, especially when you are working in a team. Having a meeting face to face, changing. I mean, exchanging your ideas in a room, brainstorming. Those things definitely, it has a different charm when you are actually doing in a meeting room rather than we are doing it through Zoom or through Teams. So I mean, personally, I feel it's a big challenge for me and many of my colleagues. I will look forward to the days when we can go back to the office, especially for some of the meetings. Then the trust factor. Well, it depends. Actually, it's very cultural. Many times, the manager thinks that all the team members are working perfectly. They are, working 8 hours a day and completing everything in time. So when you are in office, actually, as a project manager, sometimes you just, barge into somebody's desk and just, spend a couple of minutes and ask, how far things have gone. But if you are doing it through, let's say, Teams or through a phone call, it does actually look like you are trying to monitor it. So definitely, if you are doing that thing in the office, it's a very positive way of doing things. Whereas if you are actually following up through emails or phones, definitely it actually tests your trust factor. Similarly, security is a big issue here. Some of the challenges many companies are facing that, because see today my office laptop, sometimes my kids are using, when I'm just going for a coffee break, and they may visit some sites, click something, and that may create some security risk to my company, right? So these are some of the pitfalls, and it's some of the challenges that we face when we are working remotely. Again, as a project manager, when you talk to your stakeholders, when it's a face-to-face meeting, I mean, there is a way to convince it. But if you are actually doing through a remote meeting, probably that impact you may not have what you can have with a face-to-face meeting. Many times, let's say you want to increase the budget. There are many other critical things that you want to discuss. When you do things face-to-face, that has a different meaning altogether, right? New hires is also another challenge, because many employees basically, because of the pandemic situation, they don't want to switch jobs. So you may not have the right kind of candidate with the right profile. And since you cannot actually meet them personally, many of the things you have to virtually accept. And instead of interviewing him for an hour, you may just have 15-20 minutes chats over Zoom, and then identify a person. Now, as a project manager, I think that's a drag, because I always think having a personal face-to-face communication with the new hire, and find out whether he's the right fit in my team. Okay, productivity, it has some benefits as well as challenges. In fact, many companies actually are seeing a spurt in the productivity, increase in productivity. So it's a good thing. But many times I mean, especially in non-IT field, no, this is definitely a big challenge. But in IT, it's a kind of even. Similarly, nowadays, if you see, there are a lot of proactive monitoring software that is also in place. Things like this Microsoft Office 365. No, every day in the morning it sends you an email telling that you have communicated with 10 people last week, and you have worked for in this many meetings we have spent this much of time. So there are a lot of proactive monitoring tools that are being used. I don't know. I think sometimes it is kind of snooping, but anyway, it's up to differs from person to person. And since we are working from home, we are using our own router, we are using own wireless devices. So you are as secure as your router, or as secure as your wireless devices. Many times when you do your work, probably some of the spams you may carry to your company machine. And so infrastructure is definitely, if you compare the office infrastructure and your home infrastructure, there is a big difference. Even the bandwidth and other things also comes into play. And sometimes I have observed in some of the meetings there are some dogs barking in the background. I don't know whether it has happened to you, but it has happened many times. And children crying, and there are a lot of noises in the background. So you can very well differentiate, having a office environment, and having a home-based office environment. So that is thought. I thought I should bring those points here. Okay, these are some of the benefits that I could see, and for last 1 year, I have not traveled. Almost every month I used to travel, like at least 2-3 times, and there is absolutely no travel. it's a good thing for my family. But as a professional, I think no, travel is a good thing. It's a change, a good change. Not only you go out, meet people, but you do something very productive, right? Um, as an employer, no, the benefit is no, you don't have to rent or lease any new office, and no, you don't have to maintain much of the office space because nobody is coming to the office and nobody is consuming any office supplies. There is no coffee machine running, or there is nobody is using any pens or paper, any printers or anything like that, right? So there is a lot of savings in that front. Uh, and I have also read some articles where people are telling that resource hiring has become easier. Though I don't agree with that, but it looks like a lot of companies are hiring a lot of people because they think that because people are working from home, you can have access to better and bigger pool of people or resources, and you can actually catch them from anywhere in the world. So that's definitely a benefit for a lot of companies. And because of our mindset not to change jobs during this time, so there is a lot of retention. People actually try to stay put wherever they are. So that is definitely bringing some benefits not only to a project but to your organization as well. And productivity also I have covered in the challenges part, but it also appears that people are working actually instead of 8 hours a day, they tend to work actually 9 or 10 hours a day when you're working from home. Because you have access to your machine and something is not complete, you want to complete those tasks. So you tend to access more number of times and spend more time actually with your machine and do more work. And the other thing is many federal projects and many other projects where you have some compliance that you have to go to on site and you have to use this access card. So those things are actually in many places they have really toned down a lot, and they are telling that okay, you can work from home, you don't have to come to the office. So in terms of federal compliance, that has become a little bit easier. Well, so I think I have covered almost 47 minutes, more than what it was due. So in the this is the last slide, and I don't have anything, and then we can actually discuss. So if you want to become a project manager and you have passion for pursuing this career, you need to, it's good to have a PMP credential, which is called Project Management Professional. And this certification actually is done through an organization called PMI, Project Management Institute. And you have to earn around like 60 professional development units, PDUs. And you have to appear for an exam. And if you clear that, actually you will get it. And you have to also maintain it. Every 3 years, you have to again accumulate 60 PDUs. And if you're interested, actually, you can talk to me later. I have my PMP since 2007, and I have been continuing this certification. So, I mean, it is valid for till 2024 for me, or 2023, I think. So if you have any questions on that, you can actually ask me later. Well, with that, I just want to open this to everyone. If you have any questions, and I hope you like this, whatever is presented.
Awesome. Thank you. I actually have a question. What qualifies as educational units? So can any of our MBA classes qualify for that?
Okay, so that's a very good question. In fact, I have utilized that the courses that I have completed in Cal State. So there are some 28 units I could gather from different coursework. Like for me, admin 601, admin, sorry, management 601, and the one with strategic what is that strategy? There was a
Strategic management?
strategic management that also I have taken, and also this one that supply chain management. I think 515. So altogether, no, 7 points each. Yeah, for each course, actually, I have taken 7 points. So I have gathered around 28 points from my MBA.
Wow. Oh, so that would leave only just a couple more educational units outside of the MBA if you went and did the strategic management classes and like the IT project
Yeah,
management.
so besides those 28 points, you can actually listen to a lot of free podcasts. If you go to Google and search for PMP PDUs, you will find those podcasts, and you can just listen to them, and you can fill that up in this PMI website. And so there are many other ways as well. Like I'm giving this presentation here, I can earn actually a couple of PDUs, and I can report it to PMI that I have gained this 2 PDUs.
Oh, that's very cool that you can use lecturing and things like that, like
Yes, and you since you have
presentations, not
attended, you
just.
can also get 1 PDU.
Awesome. That's very cool that so it keeps you involved and engaged and continue to do that. How often do you have to recertify with your test? Is it just a continuing education or do you have to actually test again?
No, that's just the first one. The first time actually you have to go for the test, and after that it is just continuing education. You need to report 60 PDUs every 3 years.
Awesome. Oh, every 3 years. Okay, that's
Yes.
not that bad.
And actually, the kind of work you do, if your supervisor can actually, validate that, then also you can report like 15, 20 PDUs you can get from there as well, from your work.
Oh, that's very cool that you can have your work integrated into that as well, which makes sense because you're actually, putting into practice those project management skills that you learned. How long did you study for your exam before you sat for it?
Yeah, I mean, it was back in 2007. So that time, some 3, 4 months actually, I have studied, and I got into an online course. I don't remember the name of the website, but it's a pretty renowned one. And yeah, I just went through that course, and then I appeared in the exam.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, I'm sorry I dominated the questions. I hope that they were helpful for other people, but we have a few more minutes. If you guys want to go ahead and unmute or ask something in the chat, we can definitely ask Jaydeep and utilize his knowledge about PMI being a project manager. Does anyone have anything? Yes.
Hello there, Mr. Panakic. Is that pronouncing that right?
Yeah, you are very close.
Thank you. Project management is something I'm very interested in, and I find that for me right now, I do a lot of web development on my own, and I find that project specs become very fluid, especially from the stakeholder who's paying the bills.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle projects that start to get really fluid and you get a lot of change requests coming from the guys who pay the bills or, is in charge, those situations?
Yeah, again, another good question. So when you think that things are fluid, and in majority of the cases, actually the requirements or the specifications are not properly defined. You have a kind of smoky layer in front of the actual requirements. So that actually gives a lot of leverage for the project sponsor to do frequent change management. If you define your requirements very solid, and you make it more granular. What is the meaning of granular here is instead of writing a motherhood statement for a specification, you just try to quantify it. Like in the case of making a burger, you quantify that I have this budget, I have this specification, I want this particular material in my burger. So that way, both the sponsor as well as the people who are actually doing this project, they are bound by that charter that these are the specification defined very clearly. I will stick to that. Any changes in the scope will have a different consequence. Maybe increase in the budget or increase in the timeline and those kind of things.
I have plenty of questions, but I want to give other
Yeah,
people
go
a
ahead, go
chance.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll ask one. By the way, seeing the example of a hamburger made me hungry throughout your presentation. But can you elaborate a bit more on the communication piece as to, I guess, similar to the previous questions that was asked, right? When there's changes, is the communication, I mean, I guess, just the different types of communication throughout the project. I'm assuming that early on in the planning phase, it's a lot more deeper type of communication versus just like check-ins. Maybe just a quick overview on the communication piece.
Okay, so when we are talking about communication, it is actually in two different ways. One is with the project sponsor or the stakeholders, and that is one type of communication you want to do. And the other part is the communication with your team. So there are two different stacks here. So when you are talking to the sponsor, the stakeholders, so basically you are talking with them about all the high level things about the budget, about the schedule, about the progress of the project, or if there is any challenges or risks. But when you are actually talking to the team, it is mostly about planning of the project and execution of the project, that sort of thing, right? And it is again more microscopic. So I mean, whether it is with the stakeholders or it is with your team, I mean, a clear communication is the the fundamental grounding point of any project. If you are not communicating it correctly with both the teams, stakeholders as well as the team, then you are in trouble. I mean, as clear and as crisp it can be. And that is one of the reasons why in many of the meetings, actually, we take the minutes of the meeting, we share with them, and we also want a concurrence from the stakeholders or even from the team. So communication can be verbal, can be written, but in both the cases, actually, it has to be very. You have to be very particular about that, because that is one part of the project which can actually make or break the entire functioning of the project. It's a very important part of the project. Did that answer your question?
Writing all of those specifications? Do you find yourself being the one writing a lot of that and communicating what we talked about? Is that your role, or do you have someone else usually handle that role for you?
Yeah, I mean, see, initially I used to do that, but over a period of time, as a leader, you also want to create a leader, right, or a set of leaders. So you train some of your deputies and some of your team members who can actually take over later on. And that way, they will do, I will do the review. They will write all the specification and I will do the review. So nowadays, actually, mostly, I'm doing program management and relationship management. So I'm not really writing all those specifications myself.
Awesome. We have a couple more minutes, so probably time for like one more question, and then you guys can all go, because I know some people will be having class. Just make sure to take your screenshot for your portfolio or for your passport. So go ahead, Daniel. I know you're asking a question.
All right, I'll make this my last one. As a project manager, how much do you have to be a specialist in what you're managing? Do you really need to be in the weeds, especially in IT? I'm transferring from web development into web security. And how much do you really need to be a tech guy before you can start managing tech guys?
See, having some subject matter expertise is definitely a plus, because if you yourself knows the driving, you can take a back seat and you can see if things are moving in the right direction or not. Suppose you don't know driving and you do not know which route you have to take, it becomes difficult for the driver. They may take you, in any way they like. But because you know that technology and you are very familiar with the technology, so it helps a lot during the team meetings. Actually, no, you can have your say. You can actually find out if things are going in the right direction or not. So definitely it is a plus, but I have seen many times just being the subject matter expert and not having other project management skills creates a lot of problem. And I have seen people without having the subject matter expertise, they have managed the project very well. I mean, they get along with the team members. They're really good communicators, and they know the project management side pretty well. So even actually people are coming from other industries to IT industry, and they're flourishing because they know how to handle project. And because they don't have the subject matter expertise, so they normally keep a couple of people alongside so that they will advise know where things are going wrong or right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jaydeep, and everyone for coming and attending. If you happen to miss some of it, we will be posting this on YouTube. So I'm going to stop recording now.